Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you're watching this live or with the replay, I'm your host, Wanda L. Scott, and welcome to Thrive Thursdays. I know you're ready to thrive. And so, our mindset pivot today, so we can thrive and not just survive, is focusing on the fear of failure. We humans are always doing this balancing act of success and failure across our lives, not just one area. And sometimes we stop in that particular area and we write failure across our thoughts and our mind. We can't do that because it sends us into this gray space. We're like, what is really going on? Am I failing? And you go into this fear and anxiety. But we have to remember that there are so many people who've gone before us and who've given us good information about failure and what it really is. So the first quote that I love is by the infamous Kobe Bryant. And I think he knows a little bit about successes and failures and being in the public eye. But he says, you can't be held captive by the fear of failure or the fear of what people may say. Wow. I think that's good advice by Kobe Bryant. He left us with a lot of good information and a great legacy. So, no, we will not be captive by the fear of failure, and we will not focus on being afraid or having fear of what people might say. So, as we go back to the fear of failure and what that looks like across our lives, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, let's kind of break that down because fear looks different depending on how we are manifesting it in our mind, our body, and our soul. So, emotionally, fear can look like anxiety. So we're fearing that we're going to fail in a certain situation, fail a certain person. It can send us into depression because we're depressed because we're thinking we're going to fail. So if you notice, these emotions are propelled by things that we're predicting into our future. And our emotions are subject to what we think about our future, a situation, a person. And when we think about failure, it throws us into shame. So all of these emotions are going around and we start feeling fear and we start manifesting that into our lives. So, what's the mindset pivot for emotions when we're talking about the fear of failure? That's being able to recognize that we're going to pivot from this fear of failure emotionally that's manifesting all of these emotions to recognize that those are lies, those are projections, those are things that we don't know, and it sends us into that shame, depression, all of that anxiety. But that's a lie. So we need to speak the truth about what failure really is, first of all, and second, that we don't know. We have the power and the capacity to not fail. And if we fail, try again. All right. So that was emotionally. The next we're going to look at is mentally. Mentally, the fear of failure manifests when we're looking at maybe you're in school, maybe you're going for a graduate degree, or maybe you're in your undergraduate degree, and there's a test. So you have fear of failing the test, fear of failing a class. What does that look like professionally? Fear of not performance. So performance anxiety. You're not going to get the promotion or you're not going to live up to someone's standard. So that's what fear looks like when we're thinking about the fear of failure mentally. So what is the mindset pivot mentally for the fear of failure? That mindset pivot is to rethink our definition of failure when it comes to our IQ, our performance, because failures lead to success. Failures give us wisdom. Failures lead us on a path of exploration where we're going to learn more, do better. So failures lead to success. That's an agile mindset. So remember, that's part of our pivot, that agile mindset to a different policy or opinion. That we pivot. A failure is just getting us closer to a new project. And in basketball, our pivot is always staying in that one position. And that reminds me, I have a great quote from the famous Michael Jordan. He says, I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but I cannot accept not trying. That's awesome when we look at emotional and mental areas where we need to overcome the fear of failure and pivot. So remember that quote by Michael Jordan. And mentally, let's learn from a genius, Albert Einstein. He says, I have tried 99 times and have failed, but on the 100th time came success. So these are our mindset pivots, and these are by people who have lived this, been successful. So what does that mean? That they have changed their perspective, right? They've changed their perspective, and it has allowed them to do that mindset pivot emotionally, mentally. And so what is our last mindset pivot? Our last mindset pivot is spiritually. So the mind, so what does fear of failure look like spiritually? It's a religious mindset. Is when we start thinking religiously and we get out of real relationship with the Lord. It becomes performative. Like we have to check all these boxes for God to love us, or we have to do all of these things. We have to, whatever your list is. I'm not getting into your faith, but spiritually, when we think about fear of failure, we fear of failing God, fear of failing someone at our church, fear of failure when we're looking at performative ways of religion. But the mindset pivot for that is humility. And because we serve a God who says that when you're weak, when you might fail, he is strong. So that's your mindset pivot spiritually. Go into humility. Pride says, I can do it. I'm going to do everything. I have to win. I have to be constantly successful. But in God, we say we're weak. We seek wisdom. We learn the mental pivot. We learn from our failures. We learn that we need God. And he comes and he gives us the strength to keep going and realize that renew our minds, that when we're weak, he's strong, and we have success and we can win. So those are your mindset pivots for mental, emotional, and spiritual thriving. Leave me a note in the comments because I hope this hits home. This is a human condition, fear of failure. It comes at different times in our lives, different ways where we're on that balancing act. But remember, you are here to make sure that you are thriving and not just surviving. Remember, I'm streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram every Thursday at 9 a.m. So follow, like, and connect with me. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I do want to hear your thoughts. So know that today you will thrive and not just survive.